The banker was smiling when the auctioneer raised the gavel. Not a wide smile. Not the kind a man gives when he is happy. It was smaller than that. Colder. The kind of smile a man wears when he believes the ending has already been written, and everyone else is only there to watch it happen. Victor Harlan stood near the auction table in a black suit too polished for a barn. His shoes had no dust on them. His cuffs were clean. His silver watch chain caught the light every time he shifted his hand. Around him, the auction barn was packed shoulder to shoulder. Farmers leaned against the railings. Neighbors stood near the livestock stalls. A few men had come to bid on equipment. A few had come to bid on land. And a few had come because there is always a crowd when a family loses something in public. At the front of the barn, auctioneer Cole cleared his throat. "Final call," he said. "Bell Farm, house, barn, Westfield, Lower Orchard, East Pasture, springhouse, equipment, and adjoining acreage." The gavel lifted. At the back of the barn, a woman pushed the door open. Every head turned. Mara Bell stepped inside carrying a bundle wrapped in dark oilcloth. Her boots were muddy. Her hair was tied back with a strip of blue cloth. Her coat was old, patched at the elbows, and still smelled faintly of smokehouse ash. Victor Harlan saw her and smiled a little wider. "Well," he said, loud enough for the front row to hear, "Earl Bell's daughter finally found her way here." Mara did not answer. She walked down the aisle slowly, holding the bundle against her ribs. The auctioneer lowered the gavel a few inches. "Miss Bell," he said, "unless you are here to bid, this sale is already in final call." "I'm not here to bid," Mara said. A few men near the wall shifted. Victor Harlan gave a soft laugh. "That paper won't save you now." Mara stopped in front of the auction table. She untied the oilcloth. Inside was an old farm deed, yellowed, folded, worn at the edges. The kind of document most people would have thrown away after the bank made a cleaner copy. Mara laid it flat on the table and looked straight at Harlan. "No," she said, "but page 12 might." The room changed before anyone spoke. The auctioneer looked down at the deed. Victor Harlan's smile disappeared, and the gavel, still held in Cole's hand, did not fall. 3 months earlier, Earl Bell had died in the West Field, with mud on his boots and a warning in his mouth. Mara had found him beside the old fence line just after sundown. His hand was clenched around the rusted latch, as if he had been trying to close the gate one last time. That night, after the doctor left and the neighbors carried food to the porch, Mara sat alone at the kitchen table. There was one envelope in front of her. Her father had written her name on it. Not Mara, not my girl. Her full name, Mara Bell. Inside was a note with only one instruction: never trust the bank's copy. At the time, she had not understood. The bank's copy of what? The mortgage? The survey? The foreclosure notice? 2 weeks later, Victor Harlan came to the farm wearing a black coat and a practiced, sorrowful face. He told Mara her father had been behind on the expanded mortgage. He told her the bank had been patient. He told her the farm had to go to auction. And when Mara asked to see the original papers, Harlan placed a clean packet on the table and tapped it once with his finger. "This is everything that matters," he said. That was the first time Mara remembered her father's warning: never trust the bank's copy. So she began searching. She searched the kitchen cabinet, the lockbox under her father's bed, the grain office, the desk drawer where Earl kept seed receipts and fence nails in the same tin. Nothing. Then Mrs. Vale from the neighboring farm came by with a covered dish and a memory. "Your father hid something after Harlan visited him," she said quietly. "I saw him take it to the smokehouse." The smokehouse had not been used in years. It leaned at the edge of the property behind a row of cedar trees, half swallowed by vines. The door stuck. The floorboards groaned. The walls smelled of old ash and cold smoke. Mara searched until her hands were black. At the back wall, behind a loose board, she found the oilcloth bundle, the original deed, and tucked inside the fold was a note in Earl Bell's handwriting. If Harlan ever comes for the east pasture, open page 12 before the gavel falls. Now, standing in the auction barn, Mara understood why her father had written it that way. He had known this day might come, and he had known the bank would want the gavel to fall before anyone looked closely. If you believe stories like this matter, stories where hidden truths, overlooked people, and old rural promises finally come into the light, stay with us here at the Hollow Harvest. Around here, every field has a memory, and every buried secret waits for the right person to dig it up. Victor Harlan stepped closer to the table. "That deed is outdated," he said. "The bank has the updated mortgage record." Mara looked at the clean packet beside his hand. "Yes," she said. "I've seen your copy. Then you know this auction is lawful. I know your copy is missing 2 pages. The room went still. Auctioneer Cole looked at Harlan. "What does she mean, missing pages?" Harlan's face did not change, but his fingers curled slightly around the edge of the table. "She means she does not understand record formatting." Mara opened the old deed. The pages were tied with brittle thread. Some edges had browned with time. The ink had faded but not disappeared. She turned past the property description, past the west field, past the house lot, past the barn parcel. Then she stopped. At the top of the page, in careful old legal script, was the number 12. Mara turned the deed toward the auctioneer. Cole leaned in. "What am I looking at?" "The east exception," Mara said. Harlan exhaled sharply. "That clause has no standing." Mara did not look at him. Cole read the page silently, then again. The crowd waited. Someone coughed near the cattle gate. Outside, wind pushed dust across the open barn door. Finally, the auctioneer spoke. "This says the east pasture, springhouse, and lower orchard were reserved as protected family land." Murmurs broke across the barn. Mara kept her hand on page 12. "It says they could not be pledged against debt unless a separate release was signed by every living Bell heir." Cole looked up. "Harlan?" The banker adjusted his cuff. "That clause was voided during the refinancing." "Then show the release," Mara said. Harlan looked at her. For the first time that day, his eyes were not amused. "The release is in the bank record." "No," Mara said. "It isn't." Cole reached for Harlan's foreclosure packet. The banker placed one hand on it. "Those are bank documents. And this is a public auction," Cole said. "If the property description is disputed, I need to see what is being sold." A long silence passed between them. Then Harlan lifted his hand. Cole opened the packet. The copy was clean, straight, and recently typed. He turned the pages. Page 9, page 10, page 11. Then page 13. He stopped. Mara said nothing. Cole flipped back, then forward again. "Where is page 12? Harlan gave a thin smile. "Copying error." Mara reached into the fold of the old deed. "There was an error," she said, "but it wasn't copying." She removed the note her father had written. Her hands trembled once before she steadied them. Cole took the note. The paper was stained at the corner, probably from the smokehouse wall. He read aloud. "If Harlan ever comes for the east pasture, ask why he removed page 12. The auction barn went silent. Even the men who had come only to buy machinery stopped pretending not to listen. Victor Harlan's face hardened. Earl Bell was a sick man near the end. Mara turned toward him. My father was tired. He was not confused. He misunderstood business. No, she said. He understood you. That was when Jonas Reed stepped forward from the back of the barn. Most people did not notice him anymore. He was old now, bent slightly at the shoulders with white stubble and a surveyor's habit of looking at the ground before he looked at faces. But 30 years earlier, Jonas Reed had walked nearly every boundary line in the county. He removed his hat. I remember that exception. Harlan turned. No one asked you, Jonas. The old surveyor looked at him calmly. No, but I walked that line. The crowd shifted. Jonas came closer, his boots slow on the wooden floor. Earl's father protected the springhouse after the drought of '31. Said no bank, buyer, or creditor could take the water line without the family signing it away separate. Cole looked back at page 12. The springhouse feeds the lower fields. Jonas nodded. Feeds the ditch. Ditch feeds the orchard. Without it, the lower acreage isn't what the bank says it is. Mara looked at Harlan. That means your auction notice is false. Harlan's voice dropped. It means nothing until a court says it means something. Cole's hand moved toward the gavel, then stopped. He looked at the crowd. He looked at the deed. Then he looked at the bank packet with its missing page. The sale was no longer simple, and everyone knew it. At the Hollow Harvest, we tell stories about the people powerful men underestimate. The daughters, farmers, neighbors, and witnesses who carry the one truth nobody wanted read aloud. If you're still here, you're part of that circle now. Keep watching, because page 12 was only the first thing Victor Harlan tried to hide. The banker opened his briefcase, slowly, too slowly. Mara watched him remove another folder. This one was darker, tied with string stamped with the bank's seal. Harlan placed it on the table like a man laying down the final card in a game he had already won. You want the release? He said. Fine. He untied the folder. Inside was a document bearing Earl Bell's name. Cole took it. Mara felt the blood leave her hands. The page looked official. It named the east pasture, the springhouse, the lower orchard. It stated that Earl Bell had released the protected acres into the refinancing agreement. At the bottom was a signature. Earl Bell. A murmur moved through the barn. Harlan looked at Mara with the smallest trace of his old smile returning. There, he said. Now this little interruption can end. Mara stared at the signature. For one terrible moment, she heard her father's warning and wondered if even he had been too late. Cole read the release. Jonas Reed leaned close. Mrs. Vale, standing near the doorway, pressed one hand against her chest. Mara did not move. Her eyes stayed on the date. Then she reached for the paper. Cole hesitated but handed it to her. The date was written clearly. October 14th. Mara remembered October 14th. Everyone in the Bell house remembered October 14th. That was the morning Earl's tractor rolled near the lower ditch. That was the day Jonas Reed and two neighbors lifted him from the mud. That was the day Mrs. Vale drove him to the county hospital with his right hand wrapped in a towel. Mara looked up. He couldn't have signed this. Harlan's smile faded again. Grief can confuse dates, Miss Bell. Mrs. Vale stepped forward. No, she said. Not that date. Every eye turned to her. She was a narrow woman with gray hair, a plain dress, and the kind of face that had seen enough hardship to recognize a lie before it finished speaking. I drove Earl to the hospital that morning, she said. His right hand was broken before noon. Jonas Reed came closer and looked at the signature. Earl was right-handed. The auctioneer looked down. The signature on the release was smooth, clean, steady. Not the mark of a man with a broken hand. Harlan's jaw tightened. You are all making accusations you cannot prove. Mara opened the old deed again and turned it over. Her father had written one more note on the inside flap. She had seen it before, but until that moment she had not understood why it mattered. He will bring a newer paper when the old one tells the truth. Check the date. The barn seemed to shrink around Victor Harlan. Cole took the release back and compared it with Earl's note. Then he compared it with the date. Then he compared it with the missing page 12. His expression changed. Not to anger, not yet, to recognition. The kind that comes when a man realizes he is standing too close to something criminal. Before the auctioneer made the decision that changed the room, remember this. The truth in stories like this rarely arrives with thunder. Sometimes it arrives as an old page, a broken hand, a witness who finally speaks, and a daughter who refuses to let the lie reach the gavel. Cole laid the release flat on the auction table. This sale is suspended. Harlan snapped his head toward him. You do not have that authority. Cole picked up the gavel. I have authority not to sell disputed land under a document that may be forged. The word struck harder than the gavel would have. Forged. No one repeated it. No one needed to. Mara looked at Harlan. For the first time, he did not look like the president of Greer County Bank. He looked like a man standing in a barn full of witnesses, counting exits. Jonas Reed placed his hat on the table. I'll swear to the spring line. Mrs. Vale stepped beside Mara. I'll swear to the hospital date. A farmer from the side wall raised his hand. I remember the tractor accident. Earl's arm was in a sling for weeks. Another man spoke. I saw Harlan at the farm. That winter. Earl wouldn't let him pass the porch. The crowd that had come to watch a farm be sold began turning into something else. Not a mob, a record. One voice after another. One memory after another. The kind of truth that had sat quietly in people's minds until someone finally gave it a place to stand. Harlan reached for the release. Cole put his palm over it. This stays here. Harlan's eyes narrowed. You'll regret this. Mara folded the old deed carefully but left page 12 visible. No, she said. You will. Someone rode for the sheriff. No one stopped them. The barn doors stood open, and outside the fields waited under a gray afternoon sky. For years, those fields had taken rain, drought, seed, hoofprints, and blood. They had held everything men wrote down and everything men tried to erase. Earl Bell had known that. He had known the east pasture was more than grass. The springhouse was more than stone. The lower orchard was more than trees. That water line kept the whole farm alive. Without it, the bank could break the land apart piece by piece and call it lawful. With it, the farm still had a heart, and Earl had hidden the heart of it on page 12. By sunset, the auction signs were still nailed to the gate, but no sale had gone through. Victor Harlan left before the sheriff arrived. He walked past the crowd with his hat low and his mouth tight. Nobody shouted. Nobody blocked him. Nobody needed to. A man who had smiled at the start of the auction left with every eye in the barn on his back. Mara remained at the table. The old deed lay open beneath her hand. Jonas Reed stood beside her, reading the boundary line again. Mrs. Vale touched Mara's shoulder. Your father knew, she said. Mara looked toward the barn door. Beyond it, the east pasture rolled down toward the springhouse. I think he was afraid no one would listen. Mrs. Vale looked around the barn. They listened today. 2 weeks later, the county clerk reopened the Bell deed record. The original copy still had page 12. The bank's submitted copy did not. The hospital ledger confirmed Earl Bell had been admitted on October the 14th with a broken right hand. The release was sent for investigation. Greer County Bank called it an administrative discrepancy. Nobody in town used those words. They called it what it was: a stolen page, a forged release, a public lie that almost became a legal sale. The Bell farm was not suddenly safe from every debt. Stories like this rarely end that cleanly. There would still be filings, hearings, lawyers, a winter of hard choices. But the auction had failed. The east pasture stayed with the family. The springhouse kept feeding the ditch, and the lower orchard bloomed that April like it had been waiting for someone to tell the truth. Mara returned there alone one evening. The grass was wet around her boots. The springhouse stones were dark with moss. She carried the old deed under her arm, no longer wrapped in oilcloth. At the edge of the water, she opened it again to page 12. Her father's fingerprints were not visible on the paper, but she felt them there, in the fold, in the warning, in the way he had left her exactly enough truth to stop the lie, but not enough comfort to make it easy. Mara knelt beside the springhouse. For the first time since Earl died, she let herself cry, not because the farm was saved forever, but because her father had not left her defenseless. He had left her a page, a warning, a boundary, and a reason to stand up in a room full of people who thought the gavel mattered more than the truth. Years later, people in that county still talked about the day Victor Harlan smiled at the auction. Some said it was the day a banker's luck ran out. Some said it was the day Earl Bell reached from the grave and put his hand over the farm gate. But Mara never told it that way. She said the land had remembered, the deed had remembered, and finally the town had remembered too. Because some men hide the truth in clean copies and polished folders. But old land has old records. Old families have old warnings. And sometimes justice begins with one page everyone was told not to read. Thank you for watching The Hollow Harvest. If this story kept you waiting for the truth to surface like the video, share it with someone who loves a good reversal, and subscribe for more stories of hidden documents, rural secrets, underdogs, and the justice that waits beneath the dust.